All right, welcome everybody for another Tuesday, 8 o'clock, another hour of the Raul Reyes episodes here. We're talking politics, folks. And if you've been paying attention, there's a whole lot of stuff going on. I've got a great guest tonight. I'll introduce him here in a little bit. But what I wanted to do was just sort of do a quick monologue here. Um the border is still a mess. And it looks like there's some infighting going on with Republicans up in Washington, D.C. By the way, it's good banter. I am not a fan of Kevin McCarthy, and so I think it's good jousting that there's about 10 or 12 that are challenging McCarthy to not be the speaker. I think we need fresh new blood to include McDaniel, who is the RNC chair. And if you haven't heard, Texas officially, the GOP of Texas has officially made her persona non grata. We appreciate her service, but it's time for her to go. And there are people that are going to be running for the RNC at the federal level. And of course, the speakership in Congress is still up for grabs. So nothing has happened. For everybody who's really listening in on that battle, they did a pre-vote where he got the majority of the votes. McCarthy did, but at the end of the day, the official vote doesn't happen until January. Same thing is happening right here in the great state of Texas. The SREC, so that's the State Republican Executive Committee, they met over, I think, the weekend, maybe Friday or Saturday. They go for about 2 or 3 days. I'm not sure where they met. So if you're tracking those folks, they're the ones that put all the priorities out for the Republican Party of Texas. So this weekend, they've made it a point to pass a resolution that says that we want no Democrats in party chair or chairmanship positions. So what that means is, because it happens every session, the Speaker of the House will give Republicans and Democrats chairmanship positions, where when the Senate releases all their wonderful conservative bills, and sometimes I wonder, they already know they're going to die in the House. By the time they get over to a committee that's chaired by a Democrat, it's lights out. And so the base has really been awakened. I keep saying that a lot of that has to do of the election of Donald J. Trump back in 2016, and then in 2020, as you saw 5 states sort of do something, and then he lost his race. People are really awakened to the fact that we're starting to wonder. We already know who Democrats are, folks, but we're starting to wonder. Okay, who are some of these Republicans like Phelan who keep doing this to the priorities of the Republican Party of Texas? All that said, everything goes back right here to the border. Again, we have a great guest today, put out a fantastic report. Yep, that was a hard transition to the border. Um, what I'm going to say is the invasion continues, not just of Texas, but of the United States. And the wonderful people at the Heritage Foundation, they're up in DC. They might have something. We'll ask Mike when he comes on board, see if there's an organization here local to us, but they're everywhere. And so before I go too much further, let me put this up here. So Mike Howell is the director of the oversight project at the Heritage Foundation. And this is one of those locations where they do a lot of policy building, and they have wonderful discussions about conservative values that we then throw over to at the federal level. We'll ask Mike if they get involved with a lot of the state legislatures or not, but it's mostly a federal level organization. Mike Howell, I met him back in Del Rio. I want to say April, May of 21. This is right after Joe Biden took over. And great patriot Frank Lopez out in Del Rio, who lived there for 35, 40 years now. I was born and raised in Del Rio. We decided to ring the bell hard about the mess that was coming to the border. We could already see it, folks. Joe Biden was just stripping policy after policy that Trump had put in place. Nonetheless, the Heritage Foundation and their team came down. The former county judge, Miss Laura Allen, wonderful patriot as well down there, hosted them at her ranch. And anyway, we toured the place for 2 days, and everybody just their eyes were wide open about what was happening. Now let's fast forward to today. And before I got on here, I had a quick chat with Mike, and it's just uh, uh, you know Absolutely crazy what has happened to the border under Joe Biden. And now I've got a lot of opinions about a lot of things, but I want to share this report that I thought was wonderful and it depicts exactly what is happening to America. I'm going to bring on Mike here and have him introduce the Heritage Foundation and then tell us a little bit more about the Oversight Project. But without further ado, let me bring on Mike here real quick.
Hey,
Mike,
Raul.
how are you, Mike? You doing okay?
Doing well, man. Circumstances permitting with everything that's happened to this country that's so terrible, but we're doing our best to fight back, man.
Yeah, listen, I remember last year, talking to you and some of the other folks that were out there, and I think everybody was just appalled at what we were starting to see. And by the way, we were only seeing, I guess, the precipice of the mess we're in right now. Now, tell my audience here who what a little more about the Heritage Foundation, but then I'm specifically want you to tell us about the your directorship of the oversight, because you guys have a special inkling that you do, right? You created this oversight, but first the Heritage Committee. What's it all about, so folks understand who you are, and that way we can talk about the oversight.
Right. So the Heritage Foundation is a conservative policy organization located here in D.C. It's a pretty large organization. We cover all policy, domestic, foreign, cultural, social, everything across the board, economic. We have about 250 people working here, including experts who have, spent their careers in different, policy disciplines. And so our chief purpose here is to better communicate conservative policy to those on Capitol Hill. It's not a coincidence that our office is, just a couple yards away from the U.S. Senate, and then another one next to the House. And so we basically view ourselves as a conservative outpost in Washington, D.C. And, just because we're in here doesn't mean we have many friends here. It seems every day, it's less and less because so much terrible policy is coming out of the U.S. Congress and, the Biden administration. But nevertheless, we're pushing full speed ahead on, a range of different issues. But the border is really probably the top one. What's happening at the border as a man-made, purposeful crisis. This is Biden and his minions blowing it up for political purposes, and that's really where all other policies impacted. Whether we want to talk about crime, healthcare, the school system, national security, everything flows from the border, and the border is a disaster. So until we solve that, everything else is secondary, and so that's reflected in our priorities. But with the oversight project that we stood up, we're well aware of the criticisms of conservative policy organizations over the decades. I mean, this country is on the precipice, and we're not going to save it with white papers alone and policy proposals. What we need is some offensive weaponry. And so what we've stood up is basically the investigative arm that we'd like to see of the conservative movement. And so we go out and through unorthodox ways gather as much information as we can. And we'll talk about one of those such ways in the report that we outline here. But the real kind of meat and potatoes, what we're doing is we're suing just the pants off the Biden administration. Obviously, everyone's excited for Congress to flip over to conservatives. But my theory is the Biden administration is not going to play ball with congressional oversight. And so we're ahead of that game. We're predicting that to happen. And so we're suing on all these information requests. And we've gotten a lot out there already. If you recall, the email that Mayorkas had received right before he went to the White House podium and decried that whipping hoax and said it was, reflective of the worst racial injustice in American history. Complete hoax. Well, when he went to the podium and perpetuated that hoax, we found evidence that he knew no whipping had occurred down in Del Rio. And so that's the kind of ball we're playing, is where we're using, strategic litigation. We're prying out documents and evidence. This administration is corrupt to the core, and we're going after him.
Good. Yeah, and let me tell you something. That was part of a lot of people see organizations as think tanks, and they put a lot of white papers out, but I was happy to see that the oversight organization part of the Heritage Foundation is you guys are literally executing on lawsuits, and of course this report where what you're going to look at. Let's jump in there. What led you to all of a sudden go and investigate the way the NGOs? Because folks, if that's what Mike's here for. They've put out a wonderful report. I'm going to put out up here in a minute. But what was the background of we're going to geofence cell phones and we're going to track the movement? Because at the end of the day, Mike, everybody wants to know Where is everybody going that's coming across illegally, and how are they moving? What was the I mean, one day you just said, "Hey, let's start tracking people." I mean, I guess we wanna know what led to that.
Right. Well, you were there when the seed of the idea planted. It was when we were down in the border on that trip a year ago, and we saw that Valverde humanitarian center, quote unquote. And we looked at this facility, and keep in mind this is like an abandoned building that's been repurposed, some community center. And what was happening, and it shocked a lot of us, is Border Patrol was dropping off thousands of people. And that's what's up on the screen.
Yep.
Thousands of people were being dropped off at this center, and then a bunch of workers were there and just hooking them up with plane tickets and all sorts of care and facilitation of their travel. And the light really clicked that, oh my gosh, the Border Patrol is working hand in glove with these NGOs to get people around the country. This is a massive operation. I was shocked at the scale of the whole thing. And so I was thinking, if I've been here just for 24, 48 hours and seen thousands of people just get dropped off at this place, they got to be doing this all over the border. And so with that, in mind, and went back to DC, and I started seeing other uses of this type of technology, which is, bulk cell phone data and then tracking the movement of it.
Yeah.
We saw it in COVID, where, you may remember if you watch CNN, which I don't, but I saw the clips that were all over the internet. They had these maps of people who went to spring break in Miami, and then they would say, oh my gosh, look at where everyone from Miami went throughout the country. That was using this type of technology. And then with the January 6th prosecutions, basically what they did, the FBI and DOJ, is they used cell phone tracking technology to see everyone who was within the vicinity of the protest, and then went and raided their homes. And so I started digging into this technology, learned a lot about it, and thought, hey, why don't we use that at the border? I mean, this is something every American has a right to know. The government certainly isn't telling us. They're lying about it, frankly. And so we bought this bulk cell phone data, and then we started investigating what are some other NGO facilities that are involved besides Valverde. And we, came up with about 30, and then we geofenced all of them for a 1-month period. In that 1-month period, we found 30,000 unique and anonymous devices, which is a really small number when you think about the 5 million plus across the border. So this is just a sample, a small little taste of the Biden border crisis. And then we decided to, track that data and where they went. We have the maps here, and I'm excited to walk through them with you.
Yeah, so let me do that. So this is the Valverde Humanitarian. I know this place well. I grew up there, and of course, we were running around down there about a year or so ago. But I'm going to take this one off, and then of course you geo-fenced as well. This is the Del Rio CBP station. That's the Border Patrol station. I guess every one of these dots, Mike, these are all cell phones that have been tracked in this location. Is that correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so now we're looking at folks. This is just phenomenal, and not in a good way, because what happens is they actually track Valverde, and now we've got the Valverde humanitarian location down there in Del Rio, Texas. This is Talk me through this, Mike. What this says is everybody that came out of that one location, yeah, you geofence, you've tracked all these people across America, and this is where they're ending up. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. So those dots represent where they were in a 1-month period. So who knows where they are today? But as of January of this year, that's a map of where they went.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy to me, Mike, is this is but 30 days. I mean, because I guess if you did this for the whole year, this thing would just be bled all over the place. Is that correct?
100%. I mean, you'll see in some of the maps we'll show later. It really blows up.
Well, so let's go there now because folks, this is just Del Rio. So what they did, they just went to one location. And what you're seeing here is this is the impact of 30 days from the Valverde Humanitarian Center down in Del Rio, Texas. And then, of course, phase two, because they did this in phases. So that was phase one. They just sort of went after one place. And then this is phase two, right? You looked at 22 unique devices, or actually, these are points of interest. Is that correct?
These are 20 or so different NGO facilities. And from those 20 or so facilities, we found 22,000 devices over that short period.
Yeah, and here's the crazy part. Everybody thinks that these NGOs are just along the border, but we're seeing here there's a refugee services in Amarillo. guys, I've got friends in Amarillo, so I don't want to call their names out, but if you're listening, and I know you are, did you know this? And of course, Abilene, Texas, as well. Dallas looks like it's got a couple of centers out there. Houston is not a surprise to me, Mike. It seems to be a big hug for immigration, both legal and illegal. But even there in Central Texas, I mean, Austin looks like San Antonio. We've been to that center here in San Antonio, so it's not just on the border. These people are located uh, just, I mean, north of the border, but they're everywhere essentially. And this is the only ones you could find. There's no telling that there could be others. Is that correct?
Oh, there are definitely others. We had to, pick and choose for this investigation. I mean, there are way more NGOs doing this than the ones we selected. The ones we selected were based off of information and belief that they were involved in this type of conduct. So we did physical verification of that, and that's why we selected these 30. We could work on this forever and keep finding NGOs and them going. But here's the map you got up there. That's
Yeah,
22,000 devices
this looks like
over.
a bad virus. This looks like a bad virus hit us. I mean, this is insane to me here. Is it now? This is where I'm going to ask the question. It looks like Texas just got assaulted. I mean, and this is 1 month. Is this? I know this is an obvious question, but yeah, a lot of people always say, well, and by the way, these are people who just who it's common sense would say if you're the Biden administration, a lot of these illegals are going to go to conservative districts, conservative states. But this actually proves it, right, Mike? This actually says what you've been saying is accurate because the numbers, I mean, the trails don't lie, right?
Right, absolutely. I think it's for this phase or maybe the next. We dug into the data and said what percentage of the density. So what districts had the most devices pinging them, and we were just curious as whether those were R districts or D districts. And I think it's 71% of the density ended up in R districts. So I mean, there's a lot of people out there that will credibly claim that the border crisis is being used to change the political demographics of congressional districts, and I think this map is largely supportive of that theory.
Yeah, and in a process now where election day really is more of a process, it looks like for ballot harvesting more than earning votes. So it used to be you could campaign and you would earn people's votes, but the machine on the Democrat side seems to be and by the way, I have to be careful here because what I'm going to make sure is some of it is plainly illegal, but some of the rules that they changed in a lot of the states uh, make it legal to go and do some kind of getting people to go vote. And so now all of a sudden you got Arkansas, you got Utah, you got red state Wyoming infiltrated with a lot of illegal alien new bodies. And if they can harvest their ballots, it's a game changer. Is that right, Mike?
No, 100%, and that's completely right. What you said, our quote unquote election system has turned into. It's turned into basically a ballot collecting, harvesting contest. And so basically, with the changes that have occurred, some legitimate, some mostly illegitimate, all of them are terrible. But basically, it's get as many low propensity voters and then NGO or whoever, party official, knocking on their door and collecting the ballot. And so when you flood a district with newly resettled illegal aliens who have been
Yeah.
sent there by left-leaning NGOs and then given government services, and so all their information is on file,
Yeah.
of course, the campaigns on the left are going to go knock their door, harvest their ballot, and they'll do it in a myriad of ways. One of them, I'm sure, will be, hey, our guy Biden let you in. Why don't you vote for him? Like, say thank you.
Yeah, it's just gonna be more goodies for them because it looks like everybody's on the public dime now. But yeah, let me keep moving here because we've got a couple more pictures I definitely want to go through here. And it looks like phase three, Mike. You guys went and then you just sort of focused only on the border NGOs. Is that correct? These are I guess 5,000 unique devices that you found here. Why would you then? I guess you were looking for a comparison. Is that what you were trying to do here?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Raul, when I saw that first map that we just looked at, I was like, holy smokes, like, can this be real?
Yeah.
And so I was like, we need to see if we can replicate this finding to confirm it. And so we went out and got 13, other NGOs and decided to test, the first map to see if we could replicate this because I was shocked at what we saw the first time. And then what you see here is basically the same thing. Keep in mind, it's 5,000 devices about versus 22,000 of the last map, but it's virtually the same pattern.
It is, and again, uh, everybody says, the old, don't California Mike Texas, Mike, and but it looks like they're winning this war because if all these people trek into places, and folks, if you're looking at this, it's the obvious one, the east and west coast, that's Democrat country, I guess maybe up there in Illinois as well, Chicago, but the rest of it, it's all flyover country, wonderful country, great folks, but these folks are being moved into those areas, and look, it's not if, it's purposeful now. I believe Joe Biden is trying to win every future election on the Democrat side by having a lot of these folks, but it's not just ballots and elections, Mike. They are literally changing, or I always tell folks that we are belittling the American citizenship, because really we are one of the few countries that recognizes that citizens of the United States, we are empowered. The federal government works for us. I mean, if you go to Russia or anywhere else, that doesn't happen, even if they call you citizenship or a citizen. But but this is going to change the layout of America, much like it did in Europe, right? Because wasn't it Italy and France? They've let a lot of folks in, and they can't recognize some of their own neighborhoods. It's a little too much too fast, I guess, right? This is not going to work well. Assimilation is not part of this process, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And when we look at what happened over in Europe, we should realize that the same actors that pushed mass migration into France and Germany are the same actors who are pushing illegal migration into the United States. I mean, the chief antagonist here is the George Soros network. I mean, a billionaire who's put a lot of money behind a lot of mass migration schemes and funds a lot of the NGOs who are doing the work that we're talking about today. I mean, their basic theory, and this is a Marxist theory, is that the West is evil, borders are evil, sovereignty is evil, and so the way we, implement Marxist governance is we basically import a gigantic underclass to disrupt the settled norms and historical ties and cohesion of a country. And then you have a huge class of people who are dependent on the government. Guess what? There's a political party that's all about dependency on the government. And so they're looking to sign them up for their program. There's zero assimilation. I mean, frankly, at this stage in this country, what do you assimilate into? The left is destroyed so much. And they're just really spiking the football right now. And this is a long-term game. They've been doing this for decades. This is why the left favors mass illegal migration. I'm not sure your average rank-and-file Democrat voter thinks that way. A lot of them have, bought the propaganda that's out there in the media that if you support secure borders, you're a xenophobe or a racist. I don't even know what a xenophobe is, by the way. It's just a word they call us all the time.
Well, it's like Latinx. Nobody really knows what it was.
Yeah, I
So
don't even know if I am one or not because I don't know what it is.
yeah. Well, my question now, and we could I could pop up the San Juan, the phase 4, but it's really the same. It's just another, for our audience, this is just another outfit down in San Juan, Texas. That when you look at the numbers and the maps, it ends up the same here. But I want to do is now just a couple of questions for you. We're all asking here in Texas, especially because I'm really close to San Antonio, and we know one of the major NGOs here, and but do we know who they all are? Those 22 places that you all went to look at, I know they're individually named. Like, for instance, the Valverde Humanitarian Center in Del Rio is not the same as the Border Mission Hope in Eagle Pass, Texas. And the San Juan one is the different one. But are they all tied in on the backside? Because I know early on in January, February, when Joe Biden took over, something, I don't know, like $3 billion, maybe $2 billion were outsourced, and it was a no bid contract for in layman's term, it was a no bid contract for all my GS13s who do this for a living. It's a sole source, and they use some kind of emergency declaration which bypassed all the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisitions Regulation, about how you hand out these contracts. Are We could start to name the NGOs, but are these the folks that are sponsoring the Valverde Humanitarian and the Border Mission Hopes of the world, or are they on their own? and the guy like George Soros is in there. We just can't track him. What is who's paying these people? I mean, how are they getting their
Mhm.
money?
Right. So that's a great question. That's something we're continuing to investigate, and we're working with those on Capitol Hill who are pushing it. I'll tell you my preliminary findings on this is that while the names differ, there's a common thread that runs through them. So I remember when we were at Valverde, we asked a few questions to the folks who were working there, and they indicated that they were there on behalf of a national organization. We asked, "What's a national organization?" All of a sudden, clammed up. I mean, my best guess is they're sent from some of the major Christian charities, quote unquote, that operate here down the border. Catholic Charities is a huge one. Lutheran Service is huge. Jewish refugee centers. And so while the organizations and the pop-up shops on the border may have different names, they're
Yeah.
being supported, is my theory, by the same network of folks. And the money, a lot of this is our taxpayer money. You and I are paying for this stuff. Right now, in this funding bill that they're debating on Capitol Hill, they want to give almost $1 billion to FEMA to give to these NGOs. It's ridiculous. And I like to hope that Republicans and conservatives on the Hill won't allow it. But I've been in this town too long to know around Christmas time when they all want to get home, they're willing to roll over and give it all away. And so that's what we're trying to stay on top of here.
Yeah, is that something that you're, in your director position now? I mean, that's got to be a lawsuit. I mean, we Americans want to know. I mean, there is no way that they're functioning outside the channels of federal money. So that is our taxes. But how's it getting funneled over there? I mean, last I remember, we've passed NDAAs and all this other different bills for funding the government. Was it tucked in there, or the Joe Biden now is the executive branch so powerful now that it can just splurge our money however it wants to? Because that's going to be the battle, folks. And for those of you who have been listening to me, the battle in January is going to be who the next speaker is, because if it's McCarthy, is he really going to go and use the power of the purse? Because this is where we're at, right? We now own Congress, the Republicans do, so they could just literally strong arm Joe Biden. Although you and I don't, I'm not hopeful that he's going to play ball. But somehow, and Obama did this too. Somehow they have this slush fund money that you can just do whatever they want to. I'm pretty sure that's illegal, right? I mean, I went to government 101 in high school. I'm pretty sure the Congress holds the purse. Isn't that something they can work on? And is this something you throw a lawsuit in there to determine where's this money coming from? Because this is crazy. Our taxes keep going up and they keep spending it, and then you see the invasion of America. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there needs to be consequences from the Congress as it relates to funding. I mean, right out of the gate, it should be, we'll give you money when you stop this border crisis. We're not going to give you another dime to deal with it. One of the issues is that the Congress is atrophied to such a weak branch, and it's frankly led by weak people often. And they've given so much money to DHS and FEMA, and then FEMA just grants out this money under the guise of emergency and housing and shelter. And it's not something Congress even has the guts to basically say, hey, hold up, we're not putting any more money in the emergency fund until you tell us who's already gotten it, where these people have gone, and get some answers. It's business as usual. Everyone's so scared of a shutdown and being blamed for it, they don't want to ask the hard questions or play ball. And frankly, our country's on the precipice. We're talking about 5 million people crossing the border,
Yeah.
dozens and dozens of known and suspected terrorists, over 1 million gotaways that people who don't want to get fingerprinted for probably a pretty dang good reason, and gangs, drugs are flowing across. It's not business as usual. I don't care about a government funding bill at all. What I care about is this country surviving, and I know this country cannot survive if our border is continuing to be lit on fire by Marxists who want to flood this country with mass illegal immigration.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. I'm tracking a whole lot of the solutions. I was listening to a wonderful Congressman Chip Roy. I mean, he's certainly pretty verbose about what has to happen, and that I'm aware of him and a few other congressmen. Not a lot. Maybe it's the Freedom Caucus bunch, but they're literally looking at, let's hold the line on the purse, the spending money that the executive branch can spend on these things. I'm all for shutting down, because I'm with you. I'm all for shutting down the government if it means the survival of the United States. And I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh, and he was right. You actually do better when the government is shut down, because we're all going to function on our own just fine. And by the way, the Social Security checks, all that's going to flow anyway. We're just going to shut down the people that seem to be wanting to ruin this country. So, um, any other, is the Heritage Foundation, or in your position, what other, because people want to know who's doing what else about what's happening. I heard lawsuits, which is awesome, because I mean, we're you're now executing as opposed to just throwing white papers out there. I think that's phenomenal. And that's why I brought you on, because I saw this report. I thought that's what I'm talking about. We need to be taking, not just, we need to find out where the problem is and try to tackle it. We have Congress now that is Republican led in January. What other solutions? I mean, it's just one or two that pop out that, look, if we did this, Raul, if the Republicans did this, this would just help tremendously. Is there anything else out there?
Right. So there's two things that I'm focused on, and the Heritage Foundation is pushing on next Congress to do. One is they need to come out, day one or very shortly thereafter. There's no time to waste on this.
Yeah.
With the flagship border bill that seals up all the loopholes that the Biden administration's been able to take advantage of. Now, look, if the Biden administration faithfully executed the law right now is fine as is. The law says you got to cross legally. If you're illegal, you get removed. They don't follow that, and they take advantage of loopholes that allow them to do it, funding ways that allow them to do it. It's basically the bill that we're pushing is a bill that would just zip up all those loopholes. There's no discretion for them to decide, oh, we're just going to let these million people go. Oh, we're going to shut down ICE. We zip up all those, make it mandatory, which in my mind it already is, but
Yeah.
take away any argument that they don't have to enforce the law. So that's what we're pushing for. And we joined with a coalition of like all of the other border hawk groups and everybody who served in the Trump administration at a senior level who actually had the border secured, because they were able to do it with the laws on the books. It was just policy and implementation decisions. Those are the things the Biden administration ripped up and walked away from. So we need to take away their ability to do that. And then number two, and this one's so important, and we're going to know quickly if we have a Congress that's conservative and a fighting Congress or not. That's to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. There doesn't need to be an investigation. I'll tell you what the findings of the investigation are. There are 5 million plus people illegally crossing the border. There's fentanyl flowing into every corner of this country. What else do you need to know to get this guy out of there? He is, ushering in death and decay. He needs to go. And every day that he sits at the top of the Department of Homeland Security is another day this country's taking a significant body blow. So we need to get that guy out of there ASAP.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're right. No need for conversations anymore. And Mike, I got to tell you, I think it's more than 5 million. I mean, we
Oh,
have
yeah.
seen busloads after busloads. And here's what, for anybody who still thinks, well, I'm not really seeing it. Let me tell you why. And when we were there, people were coming, we had a lot of folks from uh no, not Jamaica. What was is Jamaica that was underneath the bridge? A whole lot of, just a Haitians, a lot of Haitians. I was getting my countries mixed up here, folks. Sorry about that. But it was so in our face that the Americans just said, we're not going to put up with this. And Mike, if you go back there now, and I'm pretty sure you've been there, for everybody, we've been down there numerous times. I go hang out with this great patriot named Frank Lopez Jr. down there, former Border Patrol agent. What we've now realized is these people will cross over at 2 in the morning. They're in CBP Border Patrol agents' hands by 2:33. They're processed by 4 or 5. For the folks who go work at Laughlin in Del Rio at 5 in the morning, you might see one or two buses that just left. Other than that, everybody who goes to work at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, they're all gone, and then they process throughout the day, and they move them out really early so I guess what I'm saying is, Mike, they've made it so clinical down here that it almost looked like nothing is happening. And yet, it goes back to that 5 million. I think it's way more than that. And you can't bring in that many people and not change the layout. I say the citizenship of America, but there's no assimilation. We're going to be in deep trouble. One more quick question here. um, are you all, going, and I don't know that you do this, but in the action items, are y'all going congressman to congressman and going, look, where do you stand? Because you said something that's really clear to me. We already know who the bad guys are. It's every Democrat congressman that is in bed with Joe Biden about doing this and hasn't said a damn thing. But we've got a few folks, some people say Republican in name only or whatever. It doesn't, the bottom line, we have some really squishy Republicans who are actually okay with this. is the heritage, you guys, the oversight, you in your position, do you guys go to each Republican congressman and say, these are, will you sign on to these? I mean, is there that kind of pressure in DC? Because, us folks in Texas can't be up there at the Capitol doing these kinds of things. But is somebody going to my congressman, who just happens to be Tony Gonzalez here, Chip Roy? I have no doubts. Yeah, no doubt Chip Roy's on board. But like Michael McCall, I mean, is anybody going to all these and going, you're a Republican, are you on board? Is that happening?
Yes, that's what we do day in and day out. So we have a large government relations team. We also have the largest conservative advocacy grassroots lobbying organization, which is Heritage Action for America, which works with what we call sentinels. Those are people in every congressional district who are then amplifying the message, to that area, that congressman. But yeah, we spend all day sometimes on the Capitol. We just hosted an event today on this report with Representative Gooden. I've met with several members of Congress who are interested in this report. But unfortunately, you're absolutely right when you talk about rhinos. What's Capitol Hill doing right now? They're not solving the border crisis. Republicans are, at least Senator Tillis, is floating an amnesty bill.
Yeah.
Others are floating this Eagle Act, which is, basically a giveaway to high-skilled labor and, quote unquote, getting rid of the country caps. But it's basically a bill that, Google probably wrote for them. And it's just like, this should not be your focus. Your focus should solely be on solving the border crisis, because it's an existential and present threat. And unfortunately, there's a big disconnect between our elected leaders and the needs of the citizens. And so that's what we're doing. We're pounding on doors, we're making calls, we're having meetings, and sometimes they're uncomfortable conversations with people who should be, on the team. But, we're the accountability check on a lot of members of Congress. All we want them to do is what they told the voters that they would do, and that's end the crisis. And they're not doing that right now.
Yeah, and let me tell you, this is why I'm not a fan of McCarthy. I said that earlier. I'll say it again. I'm with you. Let's impeach Mayorkas. That should be the first thing they don't need. There needs to be zero debate, folks. Just impeach him and a whole bunch of other morons who have created this. That guy is more powerful than Congress when he can change policy and allow for illegal aliens to come in. Because guess what? He changed policy. Congress hasn't authorized it. It should never happen. But back to the criticism. McCarthy should just be saying what you're saying and I'm saying. Pull the purse. That's it. No more money for anything until you do these things, and then we pass a major budget with all the things that hardens up the laws that say nobody can come to this country by policy changes by a guy named Mayorkas or anybody else. Because listen, the border patrol, customs and border patrol down here, they're running red. Our suicide rates are so high. I mean, people are. You have to be careful about when you're going to the grocery stores around here, Mike, because there's car chase after car chase, and the fentanyl is just absolutely crazy. We're all tired of it, so we're hoping to see something. So if McCarthy stays in, and he got it by whatever square deal he made, okay. But he really needs to get after it, because America is in trouble, and we're not going to have an America like we used to if we keep letting 5 million people come in every year and a half. So, but listen, give me the last word, and then tell us where people can reach you. Uh, what else you got?
So we got a lot of lawsuits, and it's not just on the border. Terrible news for the country. It's a disaster what's happening right now. But I guess the good news is that it means there's a lot of targets, a lot of minds we can win over by showing the corruption, the incompetence, and the radicalism. And so that's why we're suing. It's in different buckets, from big tech, what they're doing on the elections, which is just a travesty, across the board. This radical abortion. They want to use the federal government basically to help people get abortion. It's crazy. And so we're suing in all these areas. We got an all-star team. We got some of the smartest people I've ever met in different pockets of expertise that are helping point us to the right, places to get docs. We have people inside the government who are, sick and tired of what's being done in their name. So this is a full-on litigation assault on the Biden administration, and then there'll be more intelligence reports like the one we rolled out. But if you want to follow along, check me out on Twitter. At mhowell tweets. If you want to follow Heritage, it's at Heritage, and our website's heritage.org. We got a lot more coming on this, and we got a lot of docs. And one thing I think will be exciting is we're going to need some help going through these thousands of pages of docs. There's people who are listening here who know a lot more and can connect dots on these things better than me and my team here in DC. And so let's put this all out for the public. Let's make this a group effort and make sure that we're actually calling on Congress to be accountable to holding the Biden administration accountable. That's the first step.
Excellent. Well, listen, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on board. We do have a lot of, I'm a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. I've got a lot of analysts, brainiac friends out there. Get a hold of Mike. You guys would love to jump in here and go through some of that, information and policy. Some of the smartest guys people I ever worked for or with were in the Air Force during my 22 years. They heard you tonight. Hopefully, they'll call you and you can get some more brain power doing research part time. You're going to not get paid, folks, because you're going to try to save America is the plan here. And so, Mike, listen, absolutely can't thank you enough for all the work you're doing. I want to thank you for coming on board here. There's a lot of folks listening in. We got about 7,000 followers. Not all of them are at the same time, but they appreciate you, what you're doing. Keep up the great work, and we will see you soon. If you come back down to Del Rio, let me know. We'll be there. And if you want to come back on about a month or so just to give us an update, we won't don't have to go that long. But if you want to, let us know. You're welcome to come here and talk to us anytime you want. Okay.
I really appreciate that, Roel. It's good to see you again, buddy.
You too. God bless you. Have a good day. Okay.
You too.
Thank you. All right, folks, there you have it. That was Mike Howell, and fantastic guy. This is his credentials here. You can check him out at the Heritage Foundation. He's the Oversight Project. I brought him on because this report is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you other than if you see this, this is the invasion of America, and this is just 1 month. And we had this explanation last week. I said geofencing is sort of how you show up to, parts of the city, and all of a sudden, you open up your phone and or your Facebook, and it says, "Hey, go eat at Burger King," and then you look to your right, and there's a Burger King. Well, it's sort of a technology that allows for advertising, and it can be used for a lot of different things, all perfectly legal. It's just all part of cell technology, and how Mike and his folks went after to try to find as much information as they possibly can. We're not going to end it there just yet. I've got another 5 minutes. Let me tell you something. I asked Mike a quick, real keen question about how many Republicans really are on board in trying to solve this problem. And if we go back here, to let me see if I can bring out this map right here. If you look in here, you see Border Mission Hope right there on the little hump of Texas. And then, of course, what you don't see is the Valverde Humanitarian Hospital. But if you go up there near El Paso, the Annunciation House is another one up there. Let me just say this. We already know, and this isn't, bash Tony Gonzalez. Part of part of this report depicts that there's a lot of congressmen with districts that have NGOs inside of them. Well, can you believe that the preponderance of them are right here in Congressional District 23? And I've been a harsh critic of Mr. Gonzalez because he said he's a Republican. But look, just a few pictures here that you can see. This is Mr. Gonzalez right here. And I want you to look at the circle that I put on the date. This is January 23rd of 2021. The ink wasn't even dry on his inauguration as a congressman, because remember, the election was in 2020 November. January early, they go in there and they get raise their right hand, and they become congressmen. January 23rd, he's down here at the Border Mission Hope, folks. And what he's doing is he's pledged his help and his support to the Border Mission Hope. Now, mind you, nothing has happened really. Joe Biden is barely starting to rip apart Trump policies that help keep the border together. But there's Tony providing his full support. Now, we've always just called him the LULAC Republican, and he's actually a Democrat. Now, I'm showing you this because it's not so much about Tony Gonzalez as it is that there's a lot of Republicans that know that this is happening. He's one of them. He's probably the worst one, and he's probably a Democrat. But let me show you this other real quick picture here. This is Mr. Gonzalez up in El Paso, and the lady standing next to him, by the way, that's her Facebook page, is Congressman Veronica Escobar. And I want you to look at the date. This is maybe 3 months into his tenure as a congressman. He's visited just about every NGO in his district. This is the Annunciation House, and I know it doesn't have it on there, but the Annunciation House, for those who don't know, is another NGO. So if you go through Tijuana into El Paso, is it Tijuana? Juarez, my bad. If you go from Juarez into El Paso, guess where you're going to end up? Much like Valverde Humanitarian Center in Del Rio or the Border Mission Hope in Eagle Pass. If you go to El Paso, you're going to end up at a place called the Annunciation House. And by the way, you can look them up. You can look them up and Google them. If you look at their philosophy, these people are Black Lives Matter, George Soros connected. So you have to ask yourself, what is Mr. Gonzalez, freshly birthed as a congressman? What's he doing at the Border Mission Hope and Eagle Pass? What's he doing at the Annunciation House, another major NGO? Now, I don't have this other picture, but if you were tracking the primaries, you know, in this last election, you saw the patriot Frank Lopez was always out there on Deszavala Street in San Antonio, and he was in front of a facility that's named after the company Endeavors. Endeavors has been around a long time, and they provide a facility. By the way, they're an NGO that received a lot of money. Earlier, Mike and I were talking about $2 and $3 billion were provided to 3 or 4 companies. One of them was Endeavors out of San Antonio. And guess what? Mr. Gonzalez's office is right there. Now, I could go on and on and on about how terrible this Democrat disguised as a Republican is. But here's the point, because he's not the only one. Back in about 2018, Michael McCall, a Republican up in New Braunfels or somewhere up there, North Texas, he puts out a letter to the administration, and it's actually the Federal Acquisitions Regulation Board that allows an NGO named Endeavors to now take care of migrant immigrants. In other words, minors, small children. Next thing you know, they've got this huge contract, and they're moving families, men, women, and children. So that's a Republican, folks, and I don't know Representative McCall any more than I we're very curious. Did he see something coming? I mean, this letter was written in 2018. By the way, Republican Representative McCall endorsed Tony Gonzalez. So a lot of this is, backroom deals. Was Tony the chosen one? It doesn't really matter. He's there now. You know the truth. You look at what Mike says about what's happening to our country, and you can't but look at this here and say, this is like a bad virus here. And if you look at it, Texas is at the forefront of all of it. I got to look at the clock here, folks. Excuse me. I'm sorry. The point being here is the Heritage Foundation and guys like Mike Howell. They have more than just white papers. They have lawsuits. They're actually trying to tackle things and do stuff. Great. And we're going to support them. And if you're a smart guy, you want to do research for those folks, give Mike a holler. But here's where we are now. This is so bad that I'm a critic of Greg Abbott. The great state of Texas is a sovereign state. The 10th Amendment and a few other amendments out there allow us, by the way, it's in the Constitution, Article 1, and I can go all the way down. I'll put it in the comment section. It allows us to defend ourselves from this kind of stuff. And I read an article that says we currently are under a coup d'etat, a silent one. This is where we're being invaded, but we don't see armies and we don't see large tanks coming across. There's not big airplanes bombing anything, but this is what you would call a silent coup d'etat because they're invading America ever so slowly right in front of our eyes. So when you hear me and a whole lot of patriots say we are at existential times, and you hear someone like Mike say this is the survival of the nation. And for anybody who looks at me and says this is a federal issue, then what the hell is the Constitution for? If the great state of Texas doesn't, if our governor can't execute an invasion declaration and then use the full brunt of it, then what is the Constitution for? And the answer is it's there. We just need men who are willing to go all out and do something about it. I guarantee you, if Carrie Lake would have won, she would have used the full brunt of the Arizona state sovereignty that is adhered to her by the U.S. Constitution to take on Joe Biden, which is why I think they could not let her win. I said it from day one. She's strong. She's wonderful. She's probably the female Trump. And, but they were going to do everything in their power to stop her from winning. Now they've got lawsuits going, and so I hope that changes things. But here in Texas, you just have to look at this map and ask yourself, this is 30 days. This is January of this year. Mike Howell and his team track cell phones that start at these mission hope, at these NGOs, non-government organization facilities that help expedite these people into our country. And this is what it looks like in America. This is no longer just, this isn't just look at it. If you're not acting on this, we need all hands on deck in Austin to press on the legislative body there to actually do something about the border. And if Abbott needs some leverage from the legislative body, guess what? We're all going to start to meet in January for something like 4 or 5 months, 6 months, maybe. We got this. We need to jump on this quickly. And so this is I look at this and it's terrible. And I think everybody would agree this is not where we want to be right now. You want to talk about inflation, you want to talk about short on supplies, short on things, food prices are up, gas prices are up, and we're on the brink of a war, World War III, with Putin and Russia, because for whatever reason we've made Ukraine a US national interest, which by the way it is not. It is absolutely not. Um, we are in deep trouble here. So I really pray if McCarthy stays that he's got the backbone to actually do what he's going to do. But I'm all for change. So McCarthy's got to go. Ronna McDaniel's got to go, and Mitch McConnell have to go. We cannot be on the precipice of a red wave and then nothing materialized. You all three are at fault for that, and it's time y'all left your post. And then, of course, we get fresh new blood. All that said, I want to thank Mike for coming on board. I think he's left the building already, so that's fine. For all of you as well, I want to thank you for listening in. If you have questions, put them in the comments section. We're going to be here every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Don't forget also that in January, about 15 January, whatever that Tuesday is, we're going to go and do this, keep doing this one here. We're going to have a lot more wonderful guests from both DC and Austin who want to jump in here and have a conversation about policy and politics, and throw down not just on Democrats, but on a bunch of rhinos who refuse to do their jobs. um, Show up at Tuesdays. And if you miss it, go to Facebook. We're on Twitter and, of course, Rumble and all these other. Go pick anyone. Just look up the Raul Reyes Show. We're going to be there. But we're going to go to Spanish because it's important to me. If you knew a lot of people that I know who really aren't paying attention to politics, it's not their fault. They're busy making a living, they're busy taking care of kids, and but in their native language, or their second but native language to their culture is Spanish, are still listening to people like Jorge Ramos. And if you listen to the locutores of the radio, which is the DJs of the radio in Spanish, they're talking out their butts about stuff they don't know, and people believe them. And so we're going to counter that with a Spanish show version of the Raul Reyes Show, because to me, it's important that we disseminate as much truth as we possibly can. You can help us by just sharing the show. Let as many people know that we're here on Tuesdays. If you miss it, catch us on the reruns. It'll be there. We're on YouTube as well. So with all of that said, we had a great show. I want to thank everybody. If you want some of these, I'm going to put these up on the notes section as well of all the social media, the maps, and to include the actual report. It's very short, lots of pictures, but it does tell a story like Mike and I try to push out today, and that is the NGOs are helping Joe Biden invade this country. We are turning inside out American citizenship, and that's no bueno. It's not any good. My father born and raised in Mexico, came here legally. I'm a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel, and I'll be damned if I just sit here and watch it happen. So, if you want to help us spread the message, just share our videos and let people come on. Tell people to come on and watch us live every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. With all that said, that's all I've got for tonight. Everybody, have a wonderful, blessed night. We're not going to be here next week because it's really close to Christmas. So we're going to catch you on the backside in January. So, like everybody else, we're going to take a break. If you get bored, just come back and watch the videos. I mean, there's like 5 or 6 videos up there that are wonderful. So if you miss them, go back and do the reruns, get a good chuckle. And of course, all that said, have a wonderful, wonderful, blessed Christmas. May God bless every single one of you and a wonderful new year. Let's get this country back to where it needs to be. Let's get out and activate, do something, and yeah, and let's make America great again. God bless you guys. Have a good night.